One evening, a man and his wife returned home from dinner. When he opened the door, he saw his wife sitting at the computer during work, which is a normal sight when he gets off of work, except for the fact that she was entering the house with him. When they went to bed, he told her that he'd unexplainably seen her sitting at the computer earlier, and she got very serious. Then told him that when he opened the door, she saw herself sitting at the computer too. BuzzFeed.com, summarized from Reddit user White Zombie Cat's experience.
Our world is defined by specific rules. We call them scientific principles or laws. These principles are statements that define and predict a range of natural phenomena. But what happens when we experience something that doesn't quite seem to follow these laws? Something ever so slight that it's not enough to describe something supernatural, but strange enough to seem like the world is not working the way it should be. In the age of the internet, more and more people are sharing their stories of these unexplainable happenings. Many have experienced glitches in video games, but some have experienced glitches in the real world. Join us tonight as we discuss the possibility that the world as we know it is not always as it seems on this episode of Snipe Hunt. Welcome back to Snipe Hunt, your frightening folklore podcast. I'm your host, Darren Young.
And I'm your host, Gary Clevenstein. And we have a wonderfully weird topic for you guys today. Glitches in the Matrix. Not the movie, but glitches in the actual Matrix.
Whoa.
Whoa. Tonight we'll be talking about experiences that could only be really defined as a glitch, and we will discuss some possibilities of what could actually be happening.
We'll save all our other stuff for the end, but I wanted to thank Jeremy and of course, Gary here, for being the first patrons of the podcast on Patreon.
Hey, this is your baby. And I feel obligated that it's part of my responsibility.
You're the stepdaddy.
To help nurse the baby to life. And so I just wanted to do my part.
So not only do they get exclusive access to any bonus episodes, that being the blooper reels, but they also get to vote on topics for future episodes. I have a poll on Patreon right now with a list of topics that our patrons get to choose from. I will add topics suggested by listeners, and whichever topic has the most votes will get an episode dedicated to it. All of this for only $1 a month. And if you give more than $1 a month, then you will have access to other goodies, but you'll have to see those for yourself at patreon.com/snipehunt.
What a deal!
I know. Now all those Patreon donations go towards helping us cover the monthly hosting fees, and anything beyond that will go towards improving the podcast with better equipment and software. All right, so now I searched the internet and found what I thought were the best stories to represent this strange phenomena. And they should give you a better idea of what these glitches are. I've pulled all these stories from Reddit, as it seems to be the site for reporting these experiences. Take it away, Gibber.
All right. First one we have for you today is The Crash by Crochet Prozac. I actually really like that name.
That's an amazing name.
I remember the crash. My dad was T-boned in his green Nissan. It was emerald green. I loved that color, which rode off the car. So, start off by totaling the green Nissan.
Yep. So far, so good.
Yeah. I remember telling the police all about it at the scene. I remember my parents telling me to tell the doctors that my neck and chest hurt, even though they didn't. All right, now we got a little insurance fraud.
Yeah.
I remember having a week off of school, which was fun. I remember my dad berating the insurance company over the phone. So a few years ago, when my dad bragged about how he had never been in an accident, I took the smug pleasure of correcting him and reminding everyone about the accident. Only everybody looked at me like I was going crazy. According to everybody in my family, my dad has never had a Nissan, and that he would never have or drive a green-colored car because he thinks they're unlucky. I've pushed it, insisted it, told my family everything I remember, and they all say exactly the same thing as above. Now we will save our theories for the end, but here is a comment from another user on the Reddit thread. Days like this says... This has got to be a past life memory. Some Poindexter says that, or he died in the crash, but his conscience entered a universe where he lived, but the crash never happened.
Dun, dun, dun. Man, that's intense. Like camping. All right, so this next story is titled, well, it's not really titled, I titled these, but, this one's Lost Card by Spiritet. Stopped at the gas station on my way to work one morning. I take out my debit card and take my car keys with me and leave everything in the car. Pay for my stuff and throw my debit card in the metal cup I have in my car. Literally half a second later, I look down and my card is gone. Pulled apart everything trying to look for it and couldn't find it. I go to work and go home to find it sitting on my desk. Double check my bank account to make sure it was the card I used, and it was. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. And then Spiritet followed up with an update. To answer most questions that I saw, no carbon monoxide leak. We have a monitor in our house. And that was the first thing I thought to check. I didn't pull up to the pump, just the normal parking lot in front of the Quick Trip, and there was maybe 7 minutes total, and no concussions in my life ever.
What does the carbon monoxide have to do with it?
Carbon monoxide can do weird stuff with your brain.
I was thinking maybe she just had her passenger window down.
Yeah, maybe. But
because the first thing I thought when she said that she put it in her metal cup in her cup holder in her car, I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you're just asking for it.
Well, I mean, we've all been here, right? We've looked, we've all put something down, then half a second later we lose it. Part of that's just our brain being stupid, but
I'm extra careful with my debit cards.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. With my phone and with my debit cards, for sure. But like I said, we've all been there, and but this seems like something more than just forgetting about something. But go ahead and read the comment on that one. Calidor
Estalon says, the fumes get just heavy enough to affect the brain's ability to store memories, resulting in the appearance of glitches when you think back on it. Calidor...
We don't know what Calidor's...
Definitely think she was high.
We don't know what Calidor's credentials are, and what fumes he's talking about, we're not sure. Yeah. Maybe the gas fumes.
Right.
And I'm not sure what he's talking about exactly, but I just wanted to
He definitely thinks she's just brain farting.
Yeah, which could be. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. All right, so the next story is called The Breakup by ZJew12. So I guess a little context is in order. My girlfriend and I had been together for about a year at the time, never had big problems, and we're both pretty relaxed people. Never have had a big fight, never had trust issues, the whole shenanigan. So one day I was out in front of my apartment building smoking a cigarette. This was before we had lived together. I had seen her the night before, had a nice dinner, got out to a bar, then gone to my place, after which she took a taxi home. So as I'm standing out in front of my apartment building, she pulls up in a taxi. I wasn't expecting her, and was pleasantly surprised to see her. I pulled out my cigarette, smiled, and walked up saying something like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" in a very friendly way. She scours at me, I think that's a word, and slaps me square across the jaw. Obviously, I'm dumbfounded, and at a loss for words, so I just kind of looked at her. She never said anything. She just barged past me into the building. I followed her up to my apartment, asking her what was happening the whole way. She goes into my apartment, grabs her bag and some of her stuff that she left there, throws a few things at me, breaking a glass or two, and knocking down a bunch of stuff on the shelf. She calls me a pig, says she knows everything, and that I've broken her heart. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, obviously, and she stops on her way out when I touch her sleeve, glares at me again, and slaps me. She tells me something like, "I hope I never see you again," and walks out. I followed her to the street, and she got in a cab and drove off. The street was pretty empty. This was maybe 8 or 9 a.m., and I watched her drive off. At this point, I'm just lost for words, scared and sad.
Isn't that... When I was married, that was 90% of the arguments. I was like, well, I had no idea.
No idea what it's about?
Yeah.
Then as I'm watching the cab drive away, someone hugs me from around my waist from behind. I turn around, and it's her, in running clothes. She was wearing heels and a leather jacket before, and I went completely pale. She said hi in her usual happy-go-lucky tone, then noticed my look and said, "What's wrong?" I spun around, no taxi. It had literally driven away 5 seconds earlier, No way it could have turned in that time, and all the lights were red. I didn't say anything to her, just ran upstairs. Her bag was gone, things were still broken, my door still wide open. So then I told her. We were both momentarily confused. No way could I have mixed her up with someone else, and she is an only child. We had security check the cameras, and sure enough, there was me following a girl to my apartment. The angles weren't great, and the film wasn't great quality, but it was pretty easy to see me in my face. But hers was always hard to make out and looked a hell of a lot like her, but never a clear shot. No way it was the same girl. Still creeps me the F out, and we don't talk about it.
And then my girlfriend turned to me and said, "Who the hell was that?"
So, yeah. So that's obviously a weird story. It's like it was such a good example of these glitches that I literally took out a different story to put this one in. There's not really any logical way to explain that.
Right.
But other than a glitch in reality,
I honestly
I guess.
thought that it was actually his girlfriend, but she had a dream.
Yeah.
And so she was mad at him.
Oh, yeah. My girlfriend does it all the time. She's mad at me because I think we talked about this before, but I'm a pretty horrible person in her dreams. I'm like the worst.
You're a douche. All right. Now we move on to Eggs by Super Unhappy Fun Time.
Eggs.
Yeah.
That was the sweet title I gave it.
I like it.
Well, once again, we have an awesome username, though.
But
Unhappy
Darren here
Fun
doesn't like ranch on it on
hash browns.
I guess hash browns.
That's disgusting.
But he puts hot sauce on his eggs.
Put ranch in my taters.
All right. We have a breakfast laid on at work every morning. Just a simple buffet of eggs, bacon, what have you. Nothing huge, and it's really only to feed about a dozen people or so. I am usually one of the first guys from my team to get to work, and the kitchen was deserted as usual. I walked into the little kitchen. There was a ceramic egg tray thing with 12 eggs in it, like the bottom half of an egg carton with a socket for each egg. All spaces are filled with warm, freshly boiled eggs. I take one, walk over to the garbage bin, shuck the shell, then I walk back over to the food and stop dead. There are 12 eggs in the tray again. No one entered the room while I was peeling the thing. I touched the mystery egg. It was the same temp as the other eggs around it. Not a big thing, nothing major, but something very strange. Given one does not get presented with strange eggs from a parallel universe every day, I peeled and ate that one too, and it was delicious. It tasted better than any of them.
See, that was Gary's input at the very end.
That was mine.
See, that would be the one egg I wouldn't eat if it was like some, because what I would think is like some dude just snuck in or my coworkers are playing a trick on me.
Yeah.
My mic's falling. Oh no. And I'll be like, that's the one egg I'm not eating. But please continue with the...
Now, before we go any further, we have a series on this podcast called Encounters, where we read and discuss truly strange experiences from people. So if you have your own glitch in reality story and would like to share it, please email us at snipehuntpodcast.com. Listeners really love this series, but we can only keep doing it if we have stories. Now that we've heard these experiences, let's talk theories.
Dun, dun, dun. It's going a little bit faster than I thought it was going to. But that's okay.
Yeah. Tricks of the mind. From these stories, we can gather that the glitches are just out of the ordinary experiences that seemingly cannot be explained. But let's try.
Let's do it.
The simplest and most mundane explanation for these events is that the mind is just playing tricks on itself. This seems like a cop-out, but this happens all the time. The brain only remembers what it deems important and filters out the rest, which mine does 90% of the crap that goes through it.
For real.
Like even at work, like I seriously cannot remember week to week. Like
I know.
My memory just sucks.
Yeah.
All right. So your brain will literally prevent itself from remembering details.
The brain is an amazing thing that is capable of the insane amount of tasks and workload that you can just do. Like even just moving my arm right now, that's a whole bunch of synapses just firing off in my brain.
Yeah.
But because it's doing all these things at once, it can't remember everything. And so it makes itself stupid so it won't overload itself.
Now, in these notes, it says that this is called selective attention, but I like to call them brain farts. Psychologists Daniel Simmons and Christopher Chabris developed the invisible gorilla test. They showed subjects a video and asked the subjects to count how many times the people in white shirts passed the ball. In the middle of the video, a man in a gorilla suit walked right out through the frame, but only half of the subjects saw the gorilla. The brain was focused on one task, so it filtered out everything else.
So the video doesn't really work when you know that there's going to be a gorilla in the video, but I can attest that I've watched this video a few years ago, and I literally did not see the gorilla because there's like a group of people passing around a ball, obviously,
right.
and they're like walking around in a circle, passing the ball, and you're watching the white shirt. A guy in a gorilla suit walks in the middle of the circle as they're passing the ball. He does a little jig and it walks off. I did not see it.
You never saw it?
I thought when I watched the video a second time and saw the gorilla, I was like, what is this witchcraft?
Like, is he actually in the middle of
Yes,
everything?
literally,
or
in
is
the
he in
middle
the
of it.
background?
No, he is not in the background. He's literally like, because they're passing around the ball in a circle as they're walking at the same time, and he literally walks to the middle of the circle, super obvious if you're looking for him, does a little jig, and then just walks out.
Yeah, well, you've seen like movies with like 80s movies, like movies that were before editing was super complex like it is now. But like, for instance, Star Wars. Have you seen that? The clip where the stormtroopers are walking through the door and the dude in the back bumps his. I never would have saw that.
No, seriously.
Unless the internet told me it was doing it.
And then the special editions, they added a clunk sound when he hits his head on the door.
So that wasn't original?
No, the clunk. Yeah, the clunk sound was added in later.
Oh,
because they were like, "That's hilarious. Let's just add a clunk."
I was like, because with the sound, and I'm thinking, how did I miss that?
But see, the clunk sound is like right before the stormtrooper starts talking, so it looks like the speakers sounds like the speakers coming on at the same time. Memory is a very fragile thing that is susceptible to change when based on outside factors. There is a phenomenon known as confabulation. Wikipedia describes it as a memory error defined as the production of fabricated, distorted, or misinterpreted memories about oneself or the world, without the conscious intention to deceive. People who confabulate and present incorrect memories ranging from subtle alterations to bizarre fabrications, and are generally very confident about their recollections despite contradictory evidence. So, when you and a friend like experience something or like have a funny story, and then you're telling it back with your friend, and you're like, no, that's not what happened, or no, this happened instead, or no, you're forgetting about this part, and then over time the memory becomes less and less reliable. And so even like in the court of law, eyewitness accounts, they can't always be 100% relied on.
Yeah, because
memory is so awful.
I've always wondered like how they do that with like trials are like 20 years later.
Yeah.
How do you expect anybody to recount that? I mean, I know it's traumatic and all that.
Right. There's no black and white answer to this. They just really have to do their best. So there are many theories that try to explain why this happens, but I won't go into them for the sake of time. But, with how fast we are going, maybe I should have. But I thought the story would take up more time. But basically, your memory cannot be relied on. So if you have a weird event like this, like maybe you lose your card and then you're looking back on it later on, if you're trying to remember it, you're not actually remembering the event itself. You're remembering what your brain recorded about the event. And then every time you access that memory, you're actually remembering the last time you remembered it.
Well, does deja vu fall under this category?
Yes.
At all?
Deja vu does fall under this category of your brain tricking itself. I think I actually have a little thing on deja vu. Science can't really explain why deja vu happens. I have my own little fun theory later on, but basically your brain just, when it's constantly looking for patterns and past experiences. So when you have experienced something that's similar to what you're experiencing now, your brain will just fire off that memory without you realizing it, or fire off that perceived memory.
Whoa.
It can maybe
I feel like I've done this before.
Yeah, maybe it's not even a real memory, or maybe it's just a confabulated one, because your brain's like, hey, this is something similar you've done, but then you remember it as being the exact same thing. So that's when deja vu happens. If anyone's out there that knows more about deja vu than I do, please correct me, because I'm by no means an expert. So there are plenty of other ways the brain tricks itself, but once again, I will not go into detail about it for time's sake. Just know that the brain is easily influenced and very susceptible to false information.
Now, using this, let's take a look at the first story, the crash. The user remembers a crash that his or her family insists never happened. The logical explanation is either confabulation or a dream that the user's brain categorized as an actual memory.
Yeah, that's another thing, is you can have a dream, but then later on, it'll seem like
Dude, this happens to
you've
me
actually
like
experienced.
a whole lot. Like
Yep.
I've asked my parents multiple times. Like I had this memory of me getting into, like, I was like 3. Keep in mind, I was like 3 or 4, and this is when I was living in Arizona, and I got in my dad's friend's car and started it and drove it into the concrete wall around the backyard.
See, I would believe that you actually did that.
Yeah, well, like, I'm convinced that that happened.
Yeah.
But my parents don't remember that.
Huh.
But I swear I remember that.
Well, the logical explanation being a dream, but there are some other explanations
Right?
that we're going to explore here in a little bit. So the second story of the lost card, where the user is getting gas and loses his or her credit card 1 second after they put it in the cup holder, might be explained that the brain was filtering out the steps of a repetitive, mundane task like getting gas, and the user simply put the card in his pocket, then later set it on his desk subconsciously. However, this isn't a perfect explanation, as the user looked all around for it. The user. Why did I say the user? I work in IT, so when I talk about people, I usually call them users. But the storyteller, I guess, looked all around right after he lost it. Surely, the user, I said it again, would have found it in his, her, or her pocket. An altered brain state, such as sleep deprivation or being under the influence of a drug, could have also affected the user's ability to distinguish what is real and what's not. But honestly, that can be really said with anyone experiencing something strange. Is like, what kind of drugs were they taking, or what kind of state of mind were they in? But that's kind of a cop out, because you could literally say that about any experience, not just these glitches. Because we've all been drunk before.
Yeah.
But I mean, beer doesn't make you hallucinate, is what I'm saying. But it might distort your memory enough to where you think something happened when it really didn't. So who knows?
Unless the beer was given to you by Bill Cosby.
Too soon.
The brain playing tricks explanation can be a stretch for a lot of these cases, such as the ones with evidence like the extra egg or the footage of the mystery woman. So let's look more into fringe theories.
Yay.
All right.
I'm just going to get a sip of water.
Yeah, me too.
Refreshing. This is the
ASMR.
ASMR section of the podcast. Listen intently as Gary drinks his water.
Oh my gosh, is this tap water?
It's actually water from the fridge.
Dang. Pretty tasty.
The perfect cure to a thirsty mind.
Oops.
Hey, Siri.
Multiple universe. One theory for these glitches occurring is that they are caused by events from a universe other than our own. This falls under multiverse theory, specifically daughter universe and parallel universe theory. Space.com explains the concepts.
You know it's legitimate if it's coming from space.com.
Yeah. Who runs that site? Is it NASA?
Elon Musk.
Oh, even better. Parallel universes. Going back to the idea that space-time is flat. The number of possible particle configurations in multiple universes would be limited to 10. What would that little triangle be?
10 up triangle, 10 up triangle, 1, 2, 2. Lots of possibilities.
Distinct possibilities, to be exact. So, with an infinite number of cosmic patches, the particle arrangements with them must repeat infinitely many times over. I'm trying to sound really smart.
It's working.
This means that there are infinitely many parallel universes. Cosmic patches exactly the same as ours, containing someone exactly like you, as well as patches that differ by just one particle's position, patches that differ by two particles' positions. Is that double?
Particle, well, not necessarily double.
Hold on.
It's just, it's a very minute change. But then it goes to the point where some parallel universes have a super minute change, but some of these changes build up over time. and then they become something that's totally different from our reality.
And so on, down to patches that are totally different from ours.
You know, I think doing that voice actually helps you read better.
Do you think so?
You're not messing up as much as usual. It's pretty incredible.
That's good. Daughter universes, or perhaps multiple universes, can follow the theory of quantum mechanics, how subatomic particles behave, as part of the daughter universe theory.
Tell us more, Professor Gary.
Well, if you follow the laws of probability, it suggests that for every outcome that could come from one of your decisions, there would be a range of universes, each of which saw one outcome come to be. So in one universe, you took that job to China. In another, perhaps you were on the way and your plane landed somewhere different and you decided to stay, and so on.
Man, I regret every day of never taking that job to China.
I would love just to have the opportunity, to be honest. I want to be able to turn something like that down. I want to be in that position in life.
Right. Yep. No thanks.
Yeah.
I can't take this job to China. My work here is too important.
Famously, physicist Stephen Hawking's last paper before his death also dealt with the multiverse.
May he rest in peace.
God, I would kill to be that smart. Or maybe not. They say that like, if you're that smart, your brain literally drives you insane.
I believe it.
The paper was published in May 2018, just a few months after Hawking's demise. About the theory, he told Cambridge University in an interview published in the Washington Post, "We are not down to
No, stop. No Hispanic accents. No Stephen Hawking impressions.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We are not down to a single unique universe, but our findings imply a significant reduction of the multiverse to a much smaller range of possible universes. So the idea when it comes to these glitches is that these strange occurrences are caused by a parallel universe bleeding through into our universe somehow. Take the story from ZJU12. When the girl who looked exactly like his girlfriend called him a pig and collected her stuff from his apartment. Maybe in a separate universe, ZJU12's girlfriend actually did break up with him, and somehow the event bled through into our universe, causing the experience.
So we've discussed this interdimensional theory before in episode 8 when we were talking about the Sasquatch being an interdimensional creature, and I feel like when I was saying that, it sounded like I was implying that the Sasquatch consciously opened a portal into our universe. And then, well, actually, in that one case where the guy...
They actually saw, where
the guy walked into basically what he described as a trap. But what I'm thinking if that is a possibility, I'm thinking that they kind of, they just accidentally walk through, a rip in their universe and wander into ours, without themselves knowing, and they're just like, oh, well, yeah, whatever, and then they can go through. Maybe they just phase in and out because we don't know what the laws of that reality are. So maybe I know it's a really weird theory, but it's just a fun one, so I like to talk about it. But you know what I'm saying? They just kind of accidentally bleed through for a bit and then phase back out into their own reality.
Right, and I don't know. It's the the idea that there's I had something in my head and I can't think about it right now. Well, I can't think of what it was. I had you were reading. I thought about it, but yeah,
brain.
This is what I'm talking about, though. My brain.
Oh, it's not just your brain. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. It's everyone's brain.
You know, have you seen the trailer for the new movie coming out called Us?
I think I was half paying attention.
It's
to
that family.
Yeah.
That's gonna be wicked. But I think that.
Is that
it's kind of this deal? Yeah.
Yeah. You think that's what it's going to be?
I think it's kind of like this deal. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They see themselves, but the
from
the evil perspective,
from the upside down, if you will.
Yes, the upside down. Exactly. Now, there is scientific evidence that supports the existence of multiple universes, but there is just as much evidence against the existence of a multiverse. Every time I think of multiverse, I think of Injustice. That's as far as we will get into the multiverse theory for now, because it's such a deep rabbit hole that we have neither the time nor the credentials to discuss properly.
It's true. We could just talk about.
My brain would explode.
Yeah, we could talk about the sci-fi version of multiverse, which we all know and love. like Injustice or DC Comics or even Marvel Comics for that matter. But this isn't a comic podcast.
Yeah.
Not yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, not yet.
All right, so our final theory on these glitches is that, and this is my favorite actually, is that reality as we know it is just a simulation run by an advanced supercomputer. Prepare for an existential crisis.
Ooh.
Now, this probably sounds like something you hear from a stoner after watching a movie from the Matrix franchise, but there are plenty of scientists out there who think that there is a good chance that we live in simulated reality, the most famous being Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon Musk. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, gains will eventually be indistinguishable from reality. Musk said before concluding, "There's a 1 in billions chance that we are in base reality. We are most likely in a simulation." So he thinks that there's a much smaller chance of us not being in a simulation than there is being in one. He says there's a 1 in a billion chance that we're not in a simulation. That would explain a lot of his behavior as of late. He was like, "Oh, I'm just in a simulation. It doesn't matter." That must be nice to live life like that. Well, in a certain way, you're like, because you're like, I'm in a simulation, nothing I do matters. But then you're like, I'm in a simulation, nothing I do matters.
Did you hear him on the Joe Rogan podcast?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, like I guess he hit a marijuana cigarette. With
I
Joe.
saw that. I saw the video clip
People
of it. Flipped out.
Flipped.
I was like, that is like the least controversial thing he's done.
No.
I would think more people would be bad about them calling the rescuer over in Thailand a pedophile.
Yeah.
But I guess not. He smoked a funny cigarette.
Yeah.
That's obviously more important.
That's funny.
Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson agrees. Here's what he had to say on the subject on Larry King Now.
Like Mr. Musk thinks, are we living in simulation?
I find it hard to argue against that possibility.
Meaning,
you look at our computing power today, and you say, I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that, and you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. So this is a world, and I program in the laws that govern that world. That world will have its own laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Now, you're a character in that world, and you think you have free will, and you say, I want to invent a computer. So you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down. So now you lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter? You're going to hit one of the simulations. So statistically, based on that argument, which first appeared by a philosopher from Oxford named Nick Bostrom back in the 1990s, right when computers were becoming real enough to think this through, it's hard to argue against the possibility that all of us are not just the creation of some kid in a parent's basement programming up a world for their own entertainment. And then every time something weird happens in the world, some disruptive leader takes charge, and I wonder if that programmer just got bored and had to stir the pot. So they throw somebody in there just for their own entertainment. For me, that's some of the best evidence that we live in a simulation, because this happens every time there's peace and tranquility in the world.
but if it's true, what can we do about it? If, like the Truman movie, or was that, we're in that.
Yeah, well, he can try to escape by going in the Truman movie to go through the barrier.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you were programmed by somebody, no, there's nothing you can do.
So what difference does it make if I'm programmed by someone?
I guess
since I don't know it.
I guess it doesn't make any difference at all.
Okay, so if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, you'll already be somewhat familiar with this concept, either being in a simulation, or playing around with the idea of a universe within a universe and all that stuff.
That makes my head want to explode. Just listening to that guy, like my head was like.
But he makes a fair point. But let me get through this before we talk about it a little bit more. So this theory depends on 5 assumptions. 1, It is possible to simulate consciousness, which if we keep advancing at the same rate we are now, that seems like a very real possibility. 2, tech progress will not stop anytime soon. Basically, if we take our progress we had from 1900, 1901 rolled around, we had maybe like one car, no one could fly yet. And you take 100 years to where we are now, and we have already supercomputers, and we've been
I can't fathom it being able to improve much more.
Yeah, but like in 1904, that was like the first flight, if I'm remembering correctly, and then 65 years later, we were on the moon. The rate of advancement, of technological advancement in the past 100 years alone is astounding.
Yeah, but
because we've been here for thousands upon thousands of years, and nothing like that has happened. So tech progress will not stop anytime soon. Assumption number 3. Advanced civilizations will not destroy themselves. Pretty self-explanatory. Hopefully the world won't nuke each other. Number 4. Advanced civilizations will want to run simulations. So there's a multitude of reasons why they would want to do this. One, as Neil deGrasse Tyson suggested, maybe one of these beings is just bored, so he programs his own world. 2, but we run simulations all the time anyway, either from building something like a bridge or just in war, we run simulations within a computer to determine the best outcome, right?
Right.
Assumption number 5. If there are simulations, there are one of them.
There are a lot of them?
Yes. So if we assume that they want to run one simulation, we can assume they will want to run a ton of simulations. If that being the case, then that increases the likelihood that we're in one of the simulations as opposed to base reality. Has your brain exploded yet?
I'm just like,
So basically what they're saying is if all these assumptions are true, there's a hell of a lot more possibility that we're in a simulation rather than base reality.
There's so many branches off of this theory.
Yes.
Because I mean, like you were, well, for instance, you mentioned the moon landing. A lot of people would disagree that even happened.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, it's just.
And if we get down to the multiple universe theory, there's a universe out there where we haven't even landed on the moon yet, or ever plan to.
Yeah.
Or there's a universe where the moon isn't real.
Right.
Or there's a universe that there is no moon and no one has any concept of the moon. So like I said, we're not going to discuss it too much.
Yeah.
Because 1, our brains will explode, and 2, we don't have enough scientific backgrounds to know enough about it. We can just watch YouTube videos of Neil deGrasse Tyson on Larry King now. The following excerpt from scientificamerican.com further elaborates on this subject. A popular argument for the simulation hypothesis came from University of Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, when he suggested that members of an advanced civilization with enormous computing power might decide to run simulations of their ancestors. They would probably have the ability to run many, many such simulations, to the point where the vast majority of minds would be artificial ones within such simulations rather than the original ancestral minds. So simple statistics suggest that is much more likely that we are among the simulated minds. So that's what I just said. But that paragraph alone just reminded me of Assassin's Creed, of running simulations of ancestors.
Right.
Anyway, there are other reasons to think we might be virtual. For instance, when we learn about the universe, the more we learn about the universe, the more it appears to be based on mathematical laws. Perhaps that is not a given, but a function of the nature of the universe we are living in. If I were a character in a computer game, I would also discover eventually that the rules seemed completely rigid and mathematical, said Max Tegmark, a cosmologist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That just reflects the computer code in which it was written.
You know what I'm sitting here thinking? If there's somebody out there and I'm the character they picked, they are so disappointed.
It's not that so much you're picking a character. It's more like you're an NPC more than anything else.
Okay. Somebody is very
You're
disappointed
an
right
artificial
now.
conscience. Either programmers can create you by design, like themselves, or you can be computer-generated NPC, in which case it throws a million factors together to create what it is. And maybe Ancestry is just the code, like this player character plus this player character gets these traits from their offspring, gets these traits from it, which creates this new character.
I'd be one of them characters that walk into a corner and just keep walking.
Just lag.
Yeah.
But so what they're saying here is, so every video game has what it's called a physics engine. and this physics engine will run the physics for that world. So like take Skyrim for example. When you hit someone with a spell really hard and they die, they ragdoll all around and and they bounce off of the environment and off of other objects and so on and so forth. That's part of the physics engine at work. And that physics engine is created by a computer code that's mathematically solid. So what they're saying right here is that since our universe is so mathematically solid that it was created by design. Now, for Christians, they would say that it's because it was created by design, it was created by an all-knowing God. But the scientists who are for simulation theory said this was obviously the work of a programmer. You know what I'm saying? But then again, the thing about this is the mathematical logic of the universe supports simulation theory. But then at the same time, these weird glitches in the universe that scientists can't explain also support simulation theory because it's like, oh, we can't explain it because we don't have the capacity to because our programmer is preventing us from figuring it out. And it's like, so it's kind of like contradictory. It's like it explains
never ending.
It explains the not weird stuff, but it explains also the weird stuff. So you just got to really take it as it will. Also about this, the ability of the Earth to support life is everything is for it to be by chance. It's way too coincidental. We are the perfect distance away from the sun for it to give light and warmth. If we were like 30 feet close to the sun, everything would burn up and we would all die. If we were 30 feet away from the sun, everything would be frozen up.
Yeah.
It's the perfect distance. And just the moon being there and everything revolving around each other, just everything is too perfect just on our planet alone to support life. Everything is geared to support life. By chance, I find that really doubtful, but by design, it makes a lot more sense.
Well, I'll take, if you really think about it, well, I mean, there's a lot to think about. Like how is it that we are the only species?
That's also a simulation theory thing. Like there's billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of planets. And why are we the only ones that can support life?
Yeah.
Well, it's because we were the only planet that was programmed to support life. You get it? But then again, also, it's like, why would aliens exist? Why would they have the technology to come all the way here? Well, it's just the programmer or the computer program itself. And just like, here's these NPCs. Now they're going to visit Earth, and then they're going to go away, and they're going to freak everyone out on Earth. And so the aliens at this point being just another simulated consciousness. Going on that, I mentioned at the cold opening that natural laws govern how everything functions in our universe, right? So we know that the speed of light is the fastest speed that anything can travel in our universe. We know that for a fact, right? But we don't know...
speed of sound.
No, speed of sound is much slower.
Huh.
We literally have airplanes that can go faster than speed of sound. That's what creates sonic booms.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Like
Yeah.
thunder and stuff. Oh,
Come on,
lightning,
Gary.
thunder. You're right. My
So
bad.
we know for a fact that the speed
See?
of light is the fastest anything can go in our universe. But what we don't know is why that is. Why can't anything go faster than the speed of light? That's why people have a hard time thinking that aliens exist because they would have to live so far away, and there's no way that they can go faster than the speed of light. Well, this might actually indicate that the speed of light, as we know it, is actually the limit of what a computer can push out. That's the limit of how fast it can process data.
The RAM.
In our universe. Yeah, basically our RAM.
RAM.
Well, it's more like the processor itself.
Oh, yeah, the processor.
The processor determines the speed of the computer and everything else works along with it. Now the processor can only go so fast. So that's what they're saying. They're saying nothing can go faster than the speed of light because that would be beyond the processor's capabilities.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're like,
Mind blown.
yeah.
Jim Orton Conway created a programmable life situation in the 1970s called the Game of Life.
The board game?
No, not the board game.
That was my jam.
This was basically like I only watched a short video on it, so I'm sorry if I don't provide enough details on it. But you guys can look it up. It's Jim Orton Conway, and basically he set all the parameters, and then it just ran itself. And it was very rudimentary. Each square would have a certain like. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm not going to explain it, but if you just look it up, it'll make sense. But I included that because I'm saying simulations of life have already happened all the way back in the 1970s. So in the future, if technology continues to advance, we would have the ability to not only create a life simulation, but to program consciousness into each of the quote-unquote characters.
Which shortly after that comes time travel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this has become less of a glitches in reality episode and more of a, are we in a simulation?
Yeah.
But I figure that was one of the more pertinent, if that's the word I'm looking for.
Well, you got to have
theories.
you have to have a simulation to have the glitches.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
discussing the simulation is just discussing. So how this theory plays into our subject today is that these glitches in our reality may literally just be bugs in the programming code. This simulated reality could not only explain the glitches we experience, but every paranormal creatures and events such as ghosts, cryptids, and extraterrestrials. Ghosts and even such things as deja vu, near-death experiences, and mental illnesses might just be caused by bugs in the code of simulated reality.
One thing that people have against like Christianity or gods in general is if there is an all-knowing, all-loving God, why would there be such like atrocities in the world, right? But if the world itself, because like take Minecraft, right? You go in there and the world isn't pre-created when you get in there. It keeps creating itself as it goes along. So in the same way, if someone creates a world within a computer, with a universe as big as ours is, most of it would have to be computer generated anyway. So the computer creates the world, which causes these atrocities and all that, such and so on and so forth. But
you know what I'm thinking about right now, though, is Darren is wearing a hat right now.
I am.
With this like diamond thing on it. So
It's a
all of
Vulcan
this
hat.
is making me think of The Sims. And like he has that, except it's white. It's not
I
green.
have the little diamond above my head.
Yeah. So I'm imagining us probably in a Sims game right now.
Well, yeah, in a sense, chances are that we are.
Yeah.
in The Sims, but go ahead.
And whoever's watching us,
yeah.
they're hearing us.
Well, they can only. I'm sure they can only watch so many Sims at one time. So who knows if anyone's watching us right now at all?
So it seems like there was a really good chance that this reality isn't reality at all.
All right, so that does it for this episode. Any final thoughts? Are you questioning your own existence now?
Yeah, it's too much. Fun to think about.
It's fun to think about, but then again, at the same time, you're like, oh God.
But it's really hard for the brain to travel outside of what we were raised to know.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
So when you think about stuff like this, it's just like,
Well, your brain.
because
just
I'm
like,
open-minded.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
completely open-minded. Like I don't like religion. I don't completely dismiss it. I'm open to it, to everything that has to do with it, and science. I'm open to it.
Right.
You know, but it's just like when you think about some of this stuff, especially this, like I've thought about this stuff, but not fully thought it, like until listening and reading. Like
when we actually dived into these
and
subjects.
It's like, whoa, dude.
Well, people like logical people, quote unquote, like to believe that science is the answer to everything. But there's just one problem with that. The whole reason for this podcast, science can't explain everything.
Right.
There's literally like even my medical condition, alopecia areata, where my immune system attacks my hair follicles and I get spot balding. But luckily I was treated and it hasn't happened again since a few years ago. When I asked them what causes alopecia, you know what they said? We're not sure, but it's most likely genetic. So even as something as simple as a medical condition, they have no idea what causes it, essentially. That's just a very mundane, very small thing that science can't explain. Now, if we get out to the rules of the cosmic universe,
Dude.
Like I said, I'm not an expert in any of these, so I'm just trying to make a point. Anyone listening might be able just to argue against me on that, but I'm just saying.
When you were talking about your alopecia,
Oh, God.
it's something that just hit me. I was like, wait a minute.
Hold on.
You're sitting in the doctor's office. Okay? You're not feeling well.
Yeah.
And they come in, and the doctor says, it's probably just a virus.
A computer virus.
A computer virus. See, exactly.
dun.
Who came up with that? Yeah.
Mind blown all over again. All right, so that's it for us today. Please rate us on whatever you use to listen to podcasts on and tell your friends about it. It really is the best way to grow the podcast.
And we love doing this, and we want to keep doing it.
We absolutely love doing this. I would like to do it more, so hopefully I can dedicate more time to this instead of releasing like one episode a month.
Yeah.
As we're doing right now.
We want a schedule.
Yes, and the more listeners we get the more inclined we will be to do that, because we really just want to give you guys something to listen to.
Yeah.
So you guys have the biggest input on whatever we do on the show. As mentioned earlier, if you have an experience with something that cannot quite be explained, be it ghosts, a cryptid, a glitch in the Matrix story, anything, and would like to share your story, please email us at snipehuntpodcast@gmail.com to be featured in one of our episodes of Encounters. You can reach out to us on social media if you like. We'd love to talk to you, and if you have a suggested topic for the show, let us know. We'd really like to hear what you're interested in, as long as we're able to do some research on it. Oh, and also, actually meant to mention this at the beginning, but I recently submitted a story to a podcast called Monsters Among Us, hosted by Derek Hayes. It's definitely one of my favorite podcasts. It's like the whole episode's dedicated to our Encounter series, where he's just telling real experiences from real people. People have the opportunity to call in and tell the story themselves. And then he also has he reads them, and then he also has a voice actor that reads for him. But anyway, it's a great podcast. I'm on the season 7, episode 4 episode, I believe. It's called Mystery Bag, and my story's on there. So go ahead and check that out. Check out his podcast. It's really great.
We recommend you listen to the whole thing, but Darren's story is at 40 minutes and 40 seconds, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I will, I'm definitely going to tell the story on the next episode of Encounters, so if you hear it on this one, you may hear it twice, but it's definitely an interesting
It was just
story.
really cool to hear you on a popular podcast.
Yeah, on an actual podcast.
And then our little
and then, of course,
plug
I
in,
included the shameless plug for my podcast.
But then we had our little plug on Astonishing
Legends, which is also a great podcast, but chances are, if you listen to our podcast, you may already listen to one or both of those podcasts.
We were like at the 4-hour mark on Astonishing Legends, but
on their 4th episode in the series.
How awesome it felt to hear myself and Darren on a huge podcast.
Well, pretty soon we're going to record a promo, and we're just going to send it out to every paranormal podcast and hope they play it. All right, so you wanna lead us out there?
We have all experienced something that we cannot explain. Maybe you've tried to shrug it off and forget about it. After all, it's no big deal, right? It could very well be that your mind was playing tricks on you. But what if it's something more? Did you experience something that was a glimpse into another reality? Or maybe reality as we know it is all a lie. All we know for sure is that these experiences can turn into frightening folklore. Once again, we want to thank you for listening to Snipe Hunt. Your listening has been noted and will be reported with the proper authorities. All audio used was done so under the protection of fair use.
Logo design is by Ethan Rothfuss. The music used for this episode was composed by Mayu and Nature World 1986. We'll continue to search for the unexplained, and we'll hopefully see you on the next hunt.